Welcome to episode 91 of From the Shed End. Theo, how are you doing?
Like I always say on this pod, Chelsea aside, I'm doing well. Looking forward to the bank holiday weekend that's coming up this weekend, and crazy enough, I'm looking forward to a second consecutive weekend of no Chelsea football. Yeah, it's kind of enjoyable. You know, you're not going to have Chelsea, you're not going to have to go to Stamford Bridge or watch Chelsea on TV at 3 p.m., whichever time of day it is. Lose to Wolves, Aston Villa, Brentford, whichever team it may be. So yeah, looking forward to just enjoying bank holiday with some friends and family and not having to watch the watch the game. But yeah, not bad. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. You know, all things considered, like you. In fact, I really enjoyed last weekend. I was able to watch football without any sort of real passion and just enjoy the games for what they were. And this weekend will be very similar. There's been some really good games throughout the week as well. But yeah, I'm good. The sun's shining. Hay fever's kicked in. Summer is almost upon us. So yeah, it's a good time to maybe record and just get this episode out of the way, seeing as we're in turmoil at the moment. But if you are new to the channel, please make sure you subscribe. Previous subscribers, again, we appreciate that you're tuned in. Keep liking the videos, keep leaving comments, keep clicking on the links and subscribing and following all the socials as well. But let's get straight into it. Disappointing for Chelsea women last night. Tough ground to go to. Little facts, I've played there. It's a really good, nice stadium to play at, but really difficult to go there and get a result at the new camp, Camp Nou, as some people call it. What's your thoughts on overall some of the game that, you know, over the two legs? So I know you went to the first leg at Stamford Bridge, and how was that? What was the experience like there? Obviously, you know, I don't know how many women's games you've got to this season, but what was it like going? What was it like in terms of the game?
Yeah, some people I think nowadays they call it the Spotify new camp as well. That's another one to add to the list.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, game last weekend was good. I mentioned there was no Chelsea men's games last weekend, but managed to get to Stamford Bridge to watch the Chelsea Barcelona first leg of the semi final. It was a good game. Good game. I did feel like maybe Barcelona were the better team, if I'm completely honest. They had a chance early on and they scored that really good goal as well. Chelsea, I think they put a ball in the back of the net twice, but both times offside. But I think the main thing I wanted to highlight was the crowd. I think we were just under 30,000 people at Stamford Bridge for a Chelsea ladies women's game, which I think is a record. So it was great to see so many people, you know, take time out of their day on a Saturday, go watch the ladies, go support them as well. But also so many fans kind of with kits with the Sam Kerr's name on the back, with Perisse's name on the back, Melanie Lepose. So like so many Chelsea fans, you know, kind of really committed to watching the ladies team, supporting them, not just, you know, in a Champions League semi-final, but throughout the season, and great for support and banners for Emma Hayes as well around Stamford Bridge. So overall, it was a good atmosphere. It felt very friendly. Shame we couldn't get a goal though on the at Stamford Bridge and give us that little bit of an advantage going into the second leg, which unfortunately we couldn't. We couldn't win it. We only managed to get a draw. And we scored the equaliser, I think, in the 69th or 70th minute, which was just too late. But like you mentioned, very difficult ground to go to, new camp. I think it was probably a very good experience for those the ladies playing there as well and getting to a semi-final, just fallen short of the final, but nevertheless a fantastic achievement, and they should be very proud of themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I read before the game yesterday that Barcelona, this is the third successive season they've got to the Champions League final. So they're no pushover. You know, they're well, you know, well familiar with getting into the final of the women's Champions League final. So, you know, to get that far into the competition, it is a massive achievement. And like you said, Emma Hayes has done wonders, you know, throughout her time at the club. And I can't remember what game it was. It was a snippet of the dressing room or maybe the pre-match meeting that they had, and just that mentality of, you know, she's almost saying, you know, with Chelsea, we don't deserve to play shit football, basically is what she was saying, rubbish football, you know, and having that mentality drilled into you, even men or women's, you know, is always going to be a good thing. Youth team as well. So, you know, she's got a winner's mentality, and you can see she's almost the 12th player out there, you know.
Yeah.
And after the game, you can, you know, heart on her sleeve, passion inside her. So massive achievement. And like I said, you know, just to feel the new camp as it was yesterday, last night was was good to see, in terms of women's football, where it's progressing to as well. And like you said, it just fell short. I think it was 1-1 last night in the second leg, just to fall short at the final hurdle. But it was a really difficult game. I did see some of the first half, and Barcelona dominated. Maybe similar to the match you went to on Saturday, but it was a game where Barcelona, you can tell they're well organised, they're well drilled at that level, in terms of European football. And they just looked really sharp. Bit better in the second half, with bits that I did get to catch, but from Chelsea. But it was just, one goal too many, over the 2 legs, unfortunately, for the women.
Yeah, definitely. And just again, highlighting the achievements that Emma Hayes has accomplished while she's been manager of the Chelsea ladies. And I think I even read yesterday she's managing the England team at Soccer Aid this summer as well.
Okay.
Which goes to show how much she's kind of like progressed, and she's not going to be sure she's going to be managing some celebrities, but there's some big names in there as well, the likes of Gary Cahill, David Seaman.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of really good to see that as well, that she's kind of being recognised not only in the ladies football but around the kind of the sports industry as well.
Yeah, massive. I still think she's going to get a job in men's football. I really do. I think she could do. I'm going to say it. I think we're both probably thinking it. She could probably do a better job than Frank Lampard at the moment, to be fair. It's no better time to jump back over to the dark side of Chelsea, which is the men's team. Brentford. I said to you before, or maybe during or after the game, but it's the first time I've actually just refused to carry on watching football for Chelsea. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to actually watch this game of football. I want to try and dissect this into sort of 3 segments. I want to talk about Frank Lampard afterwards, but also Maurizio Pochettino, who is potentially in line to take over from Frank Lampard. But let's just talk about the game during the week. I think, was it Tuesday night, Wednesday?
Wednesday, I think. Yeah.
It was that bad. I don't even know what day it was on. So Wednesday night, and I want to try and dissect it and start with the lineup, which I think you look back to the previous game. Very defensive. And we thought maybe Frank Lampard in his press conference said he's going to change things. He's going to allow certain players, now that there's nothing to play for, to play in the team. But just talk to me about the lineup, because it was very, very defensive again. It was a lineup that didn't scream, we were going to get any goals. Sterling, I think, was up top on his own. But what's your thoughts on the lineup?
I think the lineup was terrible, absolutely terrible. You look at, we've got a month left of football. I think maybe 5 or 6 games remaining in the season. Like Lampard said, it's an opportunity maybe to rotate, play some players that maybe haven't had as much game time throughout this season. Youngsters as well. I was expecting to see Madueke start, Mudryk, maybe Carney Chukwuemeka. I've got his name right. I finally got his name right. But instead, he opts for players that have just been underperforming throughout the season. He went for Raheem Sterling. He went for Kovacic, Conor Gallagher, Cesar Azpilicueta, who made his first appearance since that head concussion back in February. And players that, quite frankly, probably won't be at Chelsea for much longer. I looked at Kovacic, his body language, everything was completely wrong about him. He couldn't even string 2 passes together. And it looks like more and more likely that his agent's pushing for a move to Man City or even Bayern Munich now. And then, like I said, you've got Madueke, Chukwuemeka, even Datro Fofana, who I haven't seen feature in a very long time. Players that are probably raring to go. Mudryk, who had a fairly good impact off the bench, like he did in his appearance against Brighton as well. But I think the main thing that I noticed with that lineup was just Gallagher and Sterling as the front two. They're not exactly the tallest of players. And when we did finally manage to put in a good corner or a good cross into the box, which was very rare to start off, there was just no one in there to header it, or no one finding that space. So it just looked like every time we kind of got the ball, we were either going to lose it or not do anything with it, or just pass it around the box until it eventually ends up with Kepa again. So no, I just kind of don't really want to be seen as kind of Kovacic, Kante, Gallagher, who's the last one? Enzo, kind of midfield, because it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And one maybe positive from that game was the subs we made. As soon as we brought on Aubameyang, it looked like we had someone in the box to actually get the ball to. He had maybe one decent header where it just skimmed over the bar. But other than that, it was just dire football, really dire football. And the lineup was the first thing that kind of made you think we're not going to win this game.
It was always going to be, I think it was always going to be a difficult game, because I think when we look back to the last game at Stamford Bridge against Brentford, I think it was 4-1. So it was always going to be a really difficult game. We know what Brentford are about. You know how much I've been screaming about Ivan Toney and Brentford as a whole. I mean, they've got a really good manager and really good team. And I mean, they're not doing as well as I probably would have expected them. I think Tony's on 19 goals this season, I think. So, you know, you'd kind of expect them to be maybe higher up. I think they're 10th, just above us in the league. But nonetheless, I mean, they got the 3 points, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. The lineup for me screamed, I want to play it safe, and I don't want to get thrashed 4-1 by Brentford. But it was poor. It was poor from. I was surprised at Aspilicueta, who, like you said, hasn't played since February. We're now talking about the last week in April, so he's missed a lot of football. For him to come in at right wing back as well, when we know, if you've been watching Chelsea this season or even the season before, his legs were. I mean, I'll give him his credit because I think it was. I can't remember if it was Reece. I can't remember who it was, but he literally tracked the run. He done really well. I think it was in the first half, and he tracked the run back, and he done really well. So I'll give him his credit there. But we know he can't play right wing back. So why have we got him playing right wing back? It's unfair. It's unfair on Aspilicueta to expect him to play after so many games out and then come back in and play such a pivotal role. But the midfield, like you said, it was shocking. You know, Kovacic clearly wants out. I read earlier on he's not happy at the club. Kante playing so far. I mean, Kante's almost been playing as a striker the last couple of games. It's such a, I watched him on Wednesday, and I'm not sure what his role was. 1 minute he was on the right side, he was on the left side, he was roaming around. He's here, there, and everywhere. And Sterling, I mean, I just don't. I mean, like you said, the height was a massive issue, and the ball comes into the box, and Ben Chilwell's the only player in the box. It just didn't make any sense. I was so. I mean, it told me that Frank Lampard, and I say this with all the nicest things I could say about Frank Lampard in the world, but he's just not quite out to be a manager. He can't manage football teams. He can't coach. He can't manage. He's been at Derby, not really done well. Everton. He's been at Chelsea. He's back at Chelsea. And this, I mean, we've scored 1 goal, I think, under Frank Lampard in 5 games. It's poor. It's poor team selection. And I do agree with you, Mudryk and Aubameyang coming on was brilliant, but why not start with them? Why not start with those players at the very start? David Datra Fofana, Carney Chukwuemeka, as you said. These players need time. They're going to be in and amongst the squad next season. Start giving them the time now to understand what their roles are going to be next season. It was car crash football. Honestly, and I've never seen Stamford Bridge empty as so many empty seats as that at Stamford Bridge for a Premier League game, even at this part of the season. So the goals, I mean, I'm trying to remember them. I think I blacked out the 2 goals. I think Aspilicueta off the corner, another set piece goal. I'm trying to think the second. I think I blacked out. I think I stopped watching at that point.
And Bumo kind of
I remember it.
cutting past way too easily past
Wesley
Fofana.
Fofana.
Then deflects off Silva, so 2 deflections, and then it goes over Kepa. But like you said, I think we're just shooting ourselves in the foot from the off of the lineup. Playing Aspilicueta at right wing back is a recipe for disaster. He was hooked off at halftime, I think, along with Gallagher. Listen, Lampard's come in to do a job until the end of the season, steady the ship, maybe kind of unite the fans a bit, given that things weren't great under Graham Potter. But I think just Wednesday just summed up our season. The stadium was empty. The atmosphere was dead. I was in the shed, which is usually kind of a buzzing stand, and there were about 8 or 9 empty seats in my row of about 15 seats. And I think Jason Cundy, he summed it up quite well. I've got a quote here. He said, "I'm actually numb to it now. I'm numb to what's going on at Stamford Bridge. There's so much wrong at Chelsea Football Club from top to bottom. I went there tonight thinking that a draw is the best we could get. Brentford, we're in disarray. Forget the squad of players. The club is in disarray. There's no getting away from it." And I think he's right. The problems stem more further than just the players and the manager. It's the club. And even, I'm not sure you got to see it, but at halftime or even at full time, they were giving away T-shirts and cannons to the crowd. There were, I think, OnlyFan models stripping down in the stands at full time when it was empty. It just feels like it's almost like a circus. We're trying to turn it into some kind of NBA spectacle or attraction. So I don't know, man. It's hard. I'm not really recognizing my club anymore or the experience I used to get at Stamford Bridge, and I really hope that changes. And I hope it's just kind of this short period of time, maybe where it's easier to get tickets. given that I think there was still so many available on the exchange before kickoff, and I even sent you the link. And then you were saying you're thinking of going, and I said you'll be thankful you didn't after full time. And
I'm
I
glad
think
I
you're
listened.
probably thankful now. But yeah, like I said, I think the problems, they stem further than just the manager and the players. And I think Lampard, he's not cut out to be Chelsea manager, but he's only here for a month, and we're all aware of that. And I think the problems stem more from the ownership, the way the club is ran, the recruitment. I'm sure we're going to touch upon it in a bit, but firing or sacking people and then and bringing them back because the players aren't happy with those decisions. So yeah, there's a lot that's wrong right now with Chelsea from top to bottom.
It's I did see the OnlyFans thing, by the way. Oh, yeah. It was shocking. I can't believe that. But no, I agree with you 100%. You know, you're spot on. Jason Kundi's spot on as well. It doesn't feel like Chelsea. It does not feel like Chelsea. And we've been in situations before where we've been in this sort of free fall before. You know, this isn't the first time this has happened to us. But it just feels this one could last a lot longer. You know, you think back to that Antonio Conte season, we kind of knew we were going to bounce back. We just had that feeling next season we'll be okay, we'll bounce back. But this season, I don't get it. I do not see us bouncing back immediately into those top four conversations, into those Premier League title chasing conversations. Champions League, you know, finalist or winning the Champions League. I don't see that happening for us. I think we're at a stage where this transition could last a couple of seasons. And I feel for Lampard in a way, because I feel like he couldn't really say no to taking the job on. I think he had to take the job on. One, he's out of work. Two, I suppose he felt that he can't turn down the Chelsea job because of how his affiliation to Chelsea. But it's done him no favours. I mean, where does he go from here? I mean, Frank Lampard, as a player, is a legend at the club, but he's almost ruining his legacy, in my opinion, for the way that things are panning out and working out on the pitch. And I do agree with you, you know, it's more than just Lampard. It doesn't stop with him. It is the owners. It is the people above Frank Lampard. But when you're putting out team selections that you know is counterproductive and, you know, you're waiting for a goal to go in before you make a sub, it just doesn't help the cause. So what do you think's next with Lampard? Where is he still good enough to manage in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, like we said a couple of weeks ago, we thought him coming at Chelsea and maybe getting a respectable finish with the results he got, maybe going a good Champions League run, could potentially put him in the shop window for another club after he leaves Chelsea as the interim coach. But hasn't really done him many favours. And I think Premier League clubs right now might not really fancy Lampard. You've got so many more attractive options for them. The likes of Ruben Amorim. You look at Aston Villa, who hired Unai Emery, and that's been a fantastic move for them. So I think for Lampard, if he's going to have to take a step down to the Championship potentially, which will be a big kind of blow to his ego, having what started there and worked his way up to the Prem, or maybe look elsewhere, look to maybe what Gerrard did in Scotland, go to Rangers or Celtic, one of those teams, build a credible reputation back in the SPL, and then eventually come back to the Premier League. But I think he's got a lot to learn. But at the same time, I think he's coming to Chelsea in one of the worst possible periods. The football we played from between now and the football we played under Graham Potter is pretty much identical, if I'm honest. It hasn't changed much, which tells me that it's not just the coach, it's also these players that just aren't committed or motivated. A lot of them only came in January. They haven't really blended in properly, I feel. So he needs I'm not saying it's going to be at Chelsea, but he needs a pre-season with a squad of players to build them up. But yeah, I think right now he isn't cut out to be a Premier League manager, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame for him, because I think he's got all the right sort of attitude to try and be, you know, a really top coach. And, you know, you can see even just from like clips or segments from the training sessions, you can see that he's trying to get things to work. And I do think you're right as well. I think a lot of it does boil down to the players. I think we've suddenly here some of them are in Mykonos and, you know, Dubai or wherever they're taking their summer holidays, but it seems like a combination of all of it. You know, it just seems like everything is just from top to bottom, from Todd Boehly down to, you know, the players. And I read another piece as well that some of the youth players are also frustrated in the development squad because Todd Boehly's bringing in certain players, the likes of maybe Carney Chukwuemeka, you know, those sort of players, Amari Hutchinson, who are coming in. It's less game time for certain players who've stepped up from maybe the under-18s and gone into that dev squad, who aren't getting any game time now because you've got the likes of Hutchinson in there. So it seems like it's gone from senior squad, dev squad. It's even touching the youth team now, which is a shame, because obviously, you know, we could potentially lose talent if they don't want to sign on for a new deal. You know, a club like maybe Brentford or a local club like Fulham might come in for them, or another London team, and might pitch some of our talent over the next couple of seasons as well. So we've got to look at it from holistically all the way down, top to bottom. It's a worrying time to be a Chelsea fan, but we've mentioned on WhatsApp a few times about Maurizio Pochettino, who seems to be the front runner now. It looks like Julian Nagelsmann and Luis Enrique have thrown in the towel. Nagelsmann, I think, is in talks now with Tottenham, and Luis Enrique's still chilling it out in Spain somewhere, I think. But Maurizio Pochettino, it's a good shout. It's one that I wasn't really keen on, but I've warmed up to the idea. But what's your thoughts on Pochettino potentially, I think, in the next couple of days, or at least in the next week or so, to be announced as the new Chelsea manager?
Yeah, I think similarly to you, like a couple of weeks ago, I was much more in favour of Enrique, Nagelsmann, potentially Ruben Amorim. But now that Pochettino seems, he is the front runner, and I think it's a matter of time before it happens in the next few weeks. I'm starting to warm up to the idea. I'm quite keen on him. I think he's a very likable manager. He works really well with youth players, Premier League experience as well, which is very important. And I'm not saying Premier League experience in the likes of Graham Potter. I'm talking Premier League experience in the likes of a manager that made it to a Champions League final with a Premier League team, got consistent top four with a Premier League team as well. My one part that maybe I'm slightly worried about or a bit apprehensive is that he's not really won a major trophy in his career. I think in his first season at PSG, he won the Ligue 1, but in his second full season, I think he lost out to Lille in Ligue 1, which isn't really reassuring given that it's a lot weaker league than the Premier League, and he was working with a very talented pool of players in Paris. But the other thing that kind of makes me a bit more excited is, like I said, the fact that he can work well with youth players, but also the Enzo Fernandez kind of Argentinian chemistry he might have. When you've invested over 100 million in a player, you've got to get him hitting the ground running and performing. And I think that maybe kind of having that manager who speaks the language, who knows the country, who knows what the players kind of, warm up to, or how they were being brought up and how you can get them to play good football, I think could be really, really important. So yeah, I'm kind of keen on the idea, and it's getting to that stage now where I just feel like we need a manager in who can, in the next couple of weeks, be at Stamford Bridge, hopefully for that Newcastle game or the Nottingham Forest game, watch it from the stands, and then come in at the beginning of June and have his say in who stays, who leaves, the kind of training sessions he wants to implement during pre-season to get these players performing again. I think that's really important because, like I mentioned it before, you had Ten Hag. I think he was announced this time last year. He came in, he cancelled all his holiday plans. He went to Carrington. He did what he had to do. And sure, maybe they had a bit of a rough start at the beginning of the season, but now I feel like United look like a proper football club. They look like they're in an FA Cup final. They got to a League Cup final. They're undoubtedly going to get top four. And I think that's what we need to do next season. We need to just focus on going on good cup runs, getting top four, and getting our summer signings or summer signings from the previous year to perform. So yeah, I think Pochettino, I'm starting to warm to the idea, and I hope, like I said, it's announced in the next couple of weeks.
I think I'm definitely with you. I think I still have reservations. I think I'm always going to have reservations of whoever came in to replace Thomas Tuchel, whether that's Graham Potter, Frank Lampard, Pochettino, whoever. I think when something was working so well, it was always going to be. I think they'd done the right, because Pochettino was always in line after Tuchel got sacked to potentially take over from Thomas Tuchel, and I think they've done the right thing by allowing Graham Potter to take the job. I don't think you could have gone from Thomas Tuchel to Maurizio Pochettino. I don't think that would have worked, and I'm glad it never, because we could be talking about Pochettino as we've been speaking about Graham Potter for the last couple of months, or that transitional period was always going to be difficult for whoever came in. I feel like things are slightly better than where they were, when we started the season after sacking Thomas Tuchel. I think this is probably the best time to get in a manager like Pochettino. I actually didn't think about the Enzo Pochettino link until you just said it. So it's something that I'm now even more excited to see someone like that. And you touched on a good point around the young players, getting some of those, the Madwekis and Mudriks and, Chukwuemeka's, Mal Augusto when he eventually joins us. Those sort of players, getting them in the right, the right system, getting them ready to play in the right team. I'm looking forward to that, because I think one thing we've definitely lacked over the last couple of seasons is someone who understands how to adapt, and I think Pochettino is very good at adapting in terms of in-game tactics and in-game management. He's very good at doing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that side of things. I like the fact he's managed in the Prem. You know, you have to think back to when he was at Southampton. He had a relatively good squad at Southampton, and they done actually okay. I mean, I'm not saying they, you know, went on and done invincibles, but they've done okay for Southampton for their level. Tottenham, I think he hit a ceiling. I think he, you know, yes, they had Harry Kane, they've got Son, but I think he hit a ceiling. There's only so much he could do without recruitment, without bringing in certain players to make the team better. And the owners over there don't do that. They don't invest well. So I think he hit the ceiling. You know, got to a Champions League final. They were in contention for the league as much as I think they finished below Arsenal that season. I think in the end, battle at Stamford Bridge killed all their hopes. But you know, you have to think he did do really well at Tottenham for what the tools that he had to do a job. So he's got better players at Chelsea. Let's be honest, the players at Chelsea are a lot better than the Eric Dyers and I'm trying to think who else was there at the time. You know, all those sort of average players at Spurs. So.
Yeah, Vertonghen's, Alderweireld, Ben Davis, Chadley,
Danny Rose. I mean, these are players that are average at best. They're not Premier League winners. So, and I'm not saying we have loads of those, but I'm just saying you would expect us over that Spurs team on paper to be better. So, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a good challenge. I agree with you. I think he needs to be in very, very soon. There's still that deadline, and I think about June, the 30th of June. That deadline is creeping up. You know, we're in May next week, so you know you want him in. You want him to make decisions, have a say at the table. Frank Lampard's willing to stay on as interim even after I think his stint as interim, to be the soundboard, bounce ideas off, and have meetings with Pochettino or whoever comes in. With his coaching staff as well. So I'm looking forward to that bit. I think weeding out the players that we need to get gone, bringing in certain players and maybe adding a striker, adding a goalkeeper, adding a DM. I'm looking forward to that period, and hopefully we get that period right as well.
Yeah, and one last thing about the kind of managers we've shared with Spurs, Conte, Mourinho, they won big trophies at Chelsea. They won F all at Tottenham. Pochettino didn't win anything at Tottenham, so it feels like maybe should he come to Chelsea, work with a better team, which I do think Chelsea's squad is better than Tottenham's on paper.
Yep.
I think he could be winning some trophies. I really think so. I think it's obviously going to have to be some baby steps. I don't think we're going to go straight in for the Prem or the Champions League again. But if we can get to some cup finals, have a respectable finish in the Prem and get back into the top four, which I think is the main goal for next season, then I think that'll be a really successful kind of first season for Poch. And like I said, I'm looking forward to it. And credit to Lampard, who's willing to stay on for a couple of weeks after he finishes his interim contract and just be that person who can pass on some information to Pochettino about the players, how the team works, how the club works as well. I think that goes to show that, maybe he's not cut out to be Chelsea manager, but he cares about the club and he cares about what happens after he leaves. And I think that's what we need to remember Frank Lampard for, being a Chelsea legend and thinking about Chelsea through thick and thin.
Yeah, it's true. It is true, 100%. He delivered some really bad news actually, and I couldn't believe it. Mason Mount and Reece James both out for the rest of the season in his press conference on Tuesday. I mean, I expected maybe Reece James, because he's just, I feel like we've probably seen the best of Reece James. I'll be honest, I don't think we're going to see the Reece James of old anytime soon, and I said that a few months ago. But two massive blows. Mason Mount, I think, out with a pelvic injury. He's had surgery on his a pelvic issue. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it required surgery. And Reece James is out with a hamstring tear, or some sort of hamstring injury, which he picked up at Real Madrid. Two massive losses, but it's going to sound horrible, but it's probably a good thing that they're both injured, because it allows them more time to recuperate properly and not be rushed back into a team that doesn't really have anything to play for. But what's your thoughts on Reece James, first of all? I mean, he's had a lot of injuries over the last 2 seasons. A player that we've heavily relied on and we miss when he's not in the team. But do you feel that this is more like maybe not a hereditary thing in terms of the James family, but it seems to be a reoccurring thing quite a lot of Reece James? Do you think it's something where he'll be able to get over next season?
It's a tricky one, yeah. I mean, when I watched him against Madrid, he didn't look 100% fit in those 2 games at the Bernabeu and at Stamford Bridge. I mean, Vinicius had a field day against him, and even at times he didn't have the ball. I was looking at him and he was kind of almost limping at times, which told me that he wasn't fit. And I don't think he has been fit even since returning from that injury he suffered back in October against AC Milan. I know he came back from that Boxing Day fixture against Bournemouth got injured again, and then was kind of in and out of the team since then. But he hasn't looked fit all season. I do think it's this kind of recurring injury that he might just need to take 3 or 4 months out of the season to properly recover, take time to, have a long rehabilitation period. And I do also feel for him because I think it's almost his build that kind of lets him down at times. I mean, I'm not criticizing his build, but he's got that build that reminds me a bit of Michael Essien. Very big calves, not exactly the tallest, but very muscly as well. And it just feels like you're putting a lot of weight every time you run, and you're kind of prone to an injury at times. But yeah, same recurring injuries, that same hamstring that seems to be popping up again. And I think it sounds terrible to say like you just said, but I think better that it happens now than maybe start of next season when we're really going to have to rely on him. I mean, now eventually we could kind of deal with him for the next 2 months, if anything, give him good time to recover, and we've got nothing to play for anymore. Shame that's a position that we don't really have a natural fit in. That's the one thing that I'm a bit annoyed about, because it would be good to maybe pick up at least a couple of points before the end of the year, especially that we're only 10 points above relegation. But yeah, I think best that it happens now than mid-August or September time.
I agree. I do agree. I think I agree with you in all aspects, but definitely the sort of carrying that muscle weight, which is, I think, as of right. I mean, I think back to Micah Richards when he was at Man City and even at Aston Villa. I mean, he still is a big guy. Do you know what I mean? He carries a lot of muscle, and to play in that role as a right back or a right wing back, and you're expected to run down the wing, you're meant to lunge in, and the way Reece James goes in for tackles, sometimes you can almost see how and why he gets injured because of the way he goes in for tackles or challenges. I think back to a couple of seasons ago, and again, I don't want to this isn't body shaming, so I hope it doesn't come across like this, but he was a lot more leaner, a lot more trimmed down, and you could see that he was enjoying his football a lot more, whereas now he seems to be just carrying a lot more muscle, and I don't think you can do that in the role that's expected of him to play. I really don't. I think hopefully this season or during the break in the season, he does sort of just maybe look after himself a bit more, or that rest and recuperation might actually work in his favour. Is there a question that you don't take him to the pre-season and he stays at home and carries on, getting fit and maybe working on a sort of solo training camp or whatever? But I feel there's something he just needs to maybe be managed better next season. And you kind of touched on a good point that we haven't really had anyone that can play in that position really. So when Reece James is potentially fit, if we want to call it that, he's almost been forced back early from an injury. Whereas I think next season we'll have Gusto, hopefully, if he's one of those players that will feature a lot more. Gives us an option. We've got an option now where we can maybe leave Reece James out of I was going to say like a Brentford, but it's probably the worst example, but you know what I mean? Like I don't know, Burnley, for instance. If we're doing okay next season and Burnley are mid-table, we can kind of maybe give Gusto that game to play. Or if it's a cup game, we can give Gusto the game. Or we've got a really good, FA Cup run, we can give him the game. So I think there's times where we can try and manage his time a bit better next season. But Mason Mount, another one, pelvic injury. I feel like he's been playing through that for a while. I'll be honest. I think that's why he's not been featuring. Maybe that's why he's not been playing well as well. We talk about his poor form and his dip in form. Maybe he's been playing through it. He's tried to nurse it through and play on. But it does beg the question. I mean, obviously, Mason Mount being out for so long, there's a lot of sort of praise around him in terms of from Frank Lampard, and that he still wants to be at the club and he can't really persuade him to stay. But there's been talks ongoing. I think there was talks last Friday with Bowley and Mason Mount. And Mason Mount put out an Instagram caption as well, and it almost kind of feels that he wants to stay at the club. I feel like he wants to, but maybe on his terms. Do you get that? Do you think that's the case with Mason Mount?
Yeah, I feel like you just mentioned, I think he's been nursing that injury for a while now and almost been playing through the pain, which maybe explains why he hasn't been performing, because we saw last year he was our player of the season. The season before that, he was our player of the season. And he was also our most kind of creative hub when it came to creating chances, getting balls into the box, set pieces. But we haven't seen that from the Mason Mount this season. So, but I also feel like there's something we don't know. Like he wants to stay, but it's almost things outside of his control that are meaning that he's looking elsewhere. I mentioned it on here so many times, but when you've got a player like Carney Chukwuemeka who's on more money than you, and you're almost, I don't want to say a club legend, but you've been one of the best performing players in the last 2-3 years, it's a big kick to the teeth in a way. It's not a nice feeling. So I'm sure he's almost asking for more money, but the club aren't willing to give him the more money unless it's maybe a 7 or 8 year contract, which he's not willing to sign. I also know that he had very positive talks with Todd Boehly, according to some sources this week. And I'm sure if you're a boyhood Chelsea player, the last thing you want to be doing is going to United. Sure, maybe you do want to go there if it means more for football, but if you've got a guaranteed spot in the lineup, you're a two-time player of the season, you're loved by the fans, your whole family, I think, lives around Cobham, and you don't live you're too far from your family home in Portsmouth as well. I think it's a shame. It's a real shame. And I think that post he put up where he's kind of updating the fans on his surgery with a big smile on his face, and I think it read somewhere in the caption, "Can't wait to see you again soon." It's almost an indication that he's pushing to stay. And I do think the more and more I think about it, I think he is going to stay. I've got a feeling he will.
And I mean, we have to remember Mason Mount is only 24 years of age. So I know in football terms that could be deemed as your peak years. You should be at the top of your game at 24, but it's still quite relatively young.
Rashford, look at Rashford. Rashford, he had a bad season and now he's back.
Yeah. He's in that bracket for me. He's in that bracket of players are going to have dips in form. You have to think there's been a lot of competition around his place as well. Look at João Felix coming in. All these players that we've brought and signed to potentially play in that sort of role. And Cuckoo, another one that's lined up to turn up in the summer as well. I think it'd be silly to. I mean, there's been talk now about Arsenal potentially coming in for him as well. Liverpool is the big key one. Thomas Tuchel, as you said about Kovacic, is a big favourite of Mason Mount as well. So, there's so many options for him as well. And I think it needs resolving. I think the owners want to try and resolve it. Mason Mount, I think, is willing to, and I think Todd Boehly is willing to reduce down that 8-year deal to maybe a 3 or 4. But I think it's now a wage structure, like you said about Chukwuemeka earning more, and he just wants to be paid in line with other players. So I hope there's a resolution that we can come to in the next couple of weeks or so. But I wanted to just keep on the injury thing. I wanted to talk about the physio, and I haven't got his name to hand, so apologies. But
Jose
I did have it to hand.
Carello, I think. I may be wrong.
We're going to go with that.
We're
going to go with that. That's his name. It's better than Patrick. But I think the fact that, the players have almost, whether it's a team meeting or whatever, they've demanded that the physio that was sacked, I think, in October or September, maybe October, around those sort of timelines, was sacked and is now being returned, been recalled, begged to come back to the club. It tells you that obviously there's a lot of issues around behind the scenes that we don't really know about, we're not privy to. It kind of sums up the season a bit more, how much of a circus owners have been this season in terms of getting so many things wrong. What's your thoughts on the return of it should have been Eva, to be fair. I think we should have gone all the way back and brought Eva back with him as well. But what's your thoughts on the physio coming back? Might help us next season.
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember these footballers, there's so much rehabilitation, kind of recovery, time in the treatment room with injuries. These physios become their mates. They do become their mates. And I think I got his name, it's Jose Calvaro. There were pictures of him with Kepa and Azpilicueta in the plane after we came back and we won the Super Cup and the Club World Cup. He was holding the trophies. He was sat next to the players on the bus, the planes. So I think he is a favourite, and that what we just saw now, that the players, they plead with the ownership for him to come back, goes to show that they were unhappy in the period that he wasn't there. And there was also a massive increase in injuries we were having as well, and decisions that didn't seem right, like rushing Reece James back for him only to get injured again. And I know we did suffer with a lot of injuries last season, the same kind of players, the Chilwells, the Reece Jameses, but there was a long period as well. I think we had players missing because of COVID. It wasn't just injuries. Yep. Whereas this year, it's just been, I can't remember a season where we've had so many injuries. And it's almost injuries where a player comes back, gets injured, while he's in the treatment room, his replacement gets injured. I think it was a game against Fulham where Zakaria Koulibaly and someone else might have all got injured in the same game. But yeah, I think it's good that the owners or whoever's making those decisions listen to the players, because if this guy is a favourite and he can get the players to kind of recover better and also increase their overall mood around Cobham and in the dressing room, then I think that's a huge bonus as well, because like I've said a few times, I think there's more than just a performance on the pitch. There's something that's not right in the dressing room. And I think that starts as well with the people that are around you. So, getting Jose Calvaro back hopefully will be a positive note for the upcoming season.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to get him back now. Getting back now because obviously, we know Reece James is out for the rest of the season. We know Mason Mount might miss the rest of the season, if not the last. Be ready for the last 2 or 3 games of the season. But it goes back to what we were just saying around that pre-season period and how crucial that's going to be. Maybe it is a Pochettino decision as well. Maybe he's asked for the previous medical staff to come back. But I do agree with you. You build up relationships. You trust people with your body. Physios know players' bodies probably better than they know their own body. So I think you have to have someone that you trust in and amongst that fitness room, the treatment room, getting these players back. And like you said, a lot of training injuries this season as well. I think Kai Havertz's been another one who missed the game on Wednesday due to a training issue. Mason Mount, if you remember, I think was out not long ago. I think with a knock in training, could have been a pelvic injury then. But good to see him back. I don't think he should have ever been sacked in the first place. I think we need to try and get the groundsman back as well. I think that was disgusting to get rid of the groundsman for the way that they did, just to sack him. I think he'd been there for over nearly 20 years. So, it's just like you can't come into a club and just, gut it out and strip it all the way back. You have to keep some of the foundations. And, these people have got livelihoods as well. They're not on millions of pounds a season. So, it's the owners. I could go on about the owners all day. But
I've just read now, actually, Jose Calvaro, he's been at Chelsea since 2016. And during the period he wasn't at Chelsea, when he left in October, he was at Como, Dennis Wise and Cesc Fabregas. Okay. So it goes to show that he's loved by Chelsea players, past and present.
Chelsea.
Yeah. So, definitely a favourite amongst the players in the current squad and in the past as well.
Yeah, he needs to stay. He can't go again. Bit of news in terms of this week, in terms of João Felix and Romelu Lukaku, and it's interesting because they're both two players. One I want to keep, one I don't want to keep, but both potentially facilitating moves to each other's clubs to facilitate the moves. So Romelu, there's been a bit of mixture, and we talk about him quite a bit on here recently. But Lukaku coming back, I think there's a meeting next week. Which involves, I think you told me, Onana as well, which it's blew my mind a little bit, that one. I'm not sure where to sit on that one. But Lukaku potentially coming back, I don't think Inter can afford him. I can't remember if it was you or maybe I saw someone else. I think it was you that said maybe he goes to Atletico Madrid, which will help the move for João Felix. But I think from what I read yesterday about João Felix is that it's another loan deal. He's settled in London. I think it's going to be 18 million that it will cost for the loan or something, with wages added on as well. What's your thoughts on Lukaku first? Because I can't remember if I spoke about it on the last episode with you, but I still think he has a role to play at the club.
Yes and no. I still think he might do. I think it could be Bowley who wants to keep him. It could be Pochettino who values him as a player. But if he's not committed to Chelsea, which he's proven to in the past, and I don't want a player who's like that. I don't want a bad egg in a dressing room who's going to cause trouble or complain to other players or even post these cryptic Instagram posts. I don't want that. And I think we saw that his transfer market value is at 40 million now, which has dropped massively since the 100 million that we paid for him. But it's still money. It is still money, and we need to recoup a lot of money this summer.
It's a lot of money to lose, though, isn't it?
It's a lot of money to lose, but it's also a big chunk of money to gain potentially if a club is willing to pay that for him. Because I don't think the club will be willing to pay that and his wages. So I think it's going to be tough to get rid of him. So it could be kind of a case where we're forced to keep him. I know that I think he had meetings as well this week to maybe talk again about his future at Inter Milan. I think Atletico Madrid, there were talks as well of maybe having some kind of swap deal with Felix and Lukaku, but we pay a bit of money on top of it because I think Felix is rated higher than Lukaku currently. But yeah, I definitely think there's decisions to be made. I can't even see him turning up to pre-season on day one because I think he's going to want his future sorted at either Inter Milan or another club before he comes to Cobham on the 1st of July, whichever day it is. I'm sure he'll be posting all of his LA Instagram posts. In the meantime, though, like he's some kind of celebrity. But yeah, I just can't see him staying at Chelsea. And the more and more I think about it, I don't want to see him back at Chelsea. I'd rather get rid of him and maybe spend more money on a Tony or an Osimhen or even, dare I say, a Harry Kane if Pochettino comes in. I know you're shaking your head, but
no,
you never know. Never say never.
No. But, there's been talks or rumours of it if Pochettino comes in. One last one last throw at the dice with Harry Kane and Pochettino, and I wouldn't be against it. I just think for the money that Tottenham are going to want for him, I think he's 31 probably now. I think maybe 31, 30, something like that. So I'm still going to scream Ivan Toney until he signs for a club. I'm sorry. I believe he is the man that will lead us to the promised land again. In terms of Lukaku, I've got a question for you. If it was a case of, so it's going to be a very sort of, I need to get this right. So if we send Lukaku to Atletico on a permanent, we keep João Felix on a permanent, but it means Mason Mount leaves and goes to Liverpool, would you be happy?
In an ideal world, I love Felix and Mason Mount to stay at Chelsea and somehow both play together. Or I do think their kind of skills and characteristics are kind of complementary and they kind of complement each other. But it's difficult to say. I think if I had to choose, I'd rather keep Mason Mount than João Felix, if I'm completely honest.
I'd agree.
I do feel yeah, I do think it's a lot of money to pay as well for Felix. I think he's valued at 80 million. He has been good, but he hasn't been mind-blowing since coming to Chelsea. I think 2 goals since joining in January. I know he had that 3-game suspension of the red card he picked up at Craven Cottage, but I think he didn't start against Brighton. He didn't start against Brentford. He's not kind of the first name on the team sheet every week now. But yeah, I think it's got to be Mason Mount. And I think the potential of Mason Mount is probably higher than João Felix's.
I'd agree. I'd love to see Mason Mount stay because I still think there's a player in there, someone who knows the club inside and out, someone who could go on to be, and I'm not saying he's not already, but someone who could go on to be a real legend at the club and cement himself as one of the real top legends at Chelsea as well. So, and I think the price for João Felix, he's a good player, and I love. He's easy on the eye. He does a lot, but I think in terms of what we've brought him in to do, and I know that's not as simple as assisting and scoring goals, but I don't think he's done as well as I expected him to do in the loan deal that he's had so far. And if it means we keep Lukaku at the expense of keeping Mason Mount, I think I'd rather that than sign João Felix when we still need it. We still then need another striker, maybe another 2 strikers. We can't rely on Broja. I still don't think Nkuku's the answer going forward. We'd still need a goalkeeper and a DM, and we still have to comply with FFP and also get rid of players as well in the summer. So I think I do think I would take a gamble on keeping Lukaku, and if next season we end up selling him or giving him away for free, then at least we've still got Mason Mount at the club. And we've probably addressed all the other issues in terms of buying a striker and getting a goalkeeper and getting a DM as well. And if it means we lose Lukaku for free, then so be it. He's not so be it. If we don't use him, we've still got a striker, we've still got a goalkeeper, and we've still got a DM, and we've still got Mason Mount at the club. I think that for me would be an ideal situation. But to lose Mason Mount to a rival, whether that's England or abroad, we'd look back on that as a Kevin De Bruyne, a Mo Salah, that sort of loss at the club, would be a big one. So, just thought I'd throw that out there. Just thought I'd throw that in to everyone who's listening and you, just to make sure everyone realises what's at stake here. Sometimes you got to take back some shit to get some good. So if it means we've got to take back Lukaku for a season or 2 and he plays a bit part, then so be it. But if we lose Mason Mount and if he discovers his form at Liverpool or Arsenal or whoever, it's a Kevin De Bruyne moment again, and we know what Kevin De Bruyne can do and Mo Salah's been doing for Liverpool. So it's a big loss, I think, in the long run.
Definitely, yeah. No, we can't afford to lose Mason Mount, and I'm confident he'll regain that form. Once he recovers from that pelvic surgery, hopefully we'll see Mason Mount back to his best next season.
Yep, I agree. Let's talk. Let's stick with Arsenal. And none of my Arsenal mates are talking to me because I've terrorised them for the last 48 hours in WhatsApps, on Twitter, and any way possible.
Surprised you don't have a City kit on right now.
Yeah, well, do you know, it was tempting. I finally feel comfortable putting on a football top, actually, for the first time in how long. But Arsenal on Tuesday, Emirates, we could have arguably, we said our season's over, but we lied, it's not, because we have a massive say in who wins this Premier League. Now, if we beat Arsenal on Tuesday, I'll be honest, it feels like a cup final. If we beat Arsenal, and this is how low up my standards are, so this is very shameless and I don't care, but if we beat Arsenal, it will feel like a cup final to me. It will feel like we've won a trophy because we know then that they can't win the Premier League. And if we always have that on Arsenal. We will always have the fact that we stopped them from winning the league. I'll take it this season. I'm shameless and I'll take it. I don't care. What's your thoughts before I get myself in more trouble? But what's your thoughts on Arsenal on Tuesday? Big game.
Yeah, we handed it on a plate to Leicester in 2016 against Spurs. It'd be just as enjoyable if Arsenal bottle it against us at the Emirates and hand it to City. Yeah, it's like you said, it could feel like a cup final, and I think if we just pick up any kind of a result, it will kind of spur these players on for the rest of the season. And we've got nothing to play for anymore. Let's be honest. They've got more to play for than us, but I think these players need to realise that it's a London derby. There's bragging rights at stake. There's a lot of pride at stake as well. We can't afford to let Arsenal just like treat us like little kids in the playground and bully past us and play their football, which they've been doing all season except for the last few weeks. So I think it's going to be a very tough game. I don't think we have had a good record at the Emirates at all, other than that 2-0 win start of last season. And the reverse fixture this year, I think, was probably one of the worst games I've ever seen Chelsea perform in, alongside the Brentford one on Wednesday. But yeah, on paper, I think Arsenal should be winning this comfortably. But I think this is when I really want to see the real Chelsea. I want to see that Frank Lampard who was running down a touchline when Tammy Abraham scored in his first stint at Chelsea. That's the Chelsea I want to see, that kind of don't give up until the very end. I do find it hard to visualize that scene, that we can't even put the ball in the back of the net right now. But yeah, I think if there's one game we need to kind of just give it our all and 100% and see these players just commit to the badge and play with a bit of hunger and passion and pride, it's this one on Tuesday at the Emirates, 8 p.m. And yeah, like you just said, there'd be nothing better than Arsenal bottling it against Chelsea. I think it'd be the highlight of the season, alongside the AC Milan win, the Borussia Dortmund win, and hopefully the Arsenal defeat or draw on Tuesday evening.
Yeah, it's gonna. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be honest. I think I know it's so petty and it's shameless and it's not the standards of Chelsea. I know that. Looking forward to stopping another team from winning the league. But I think you're right. I think Arsenal have a lot to play for. We're probably playing them at the best time of the season, where they've hit that sort of wall in terms of getting results. I think they're on a run of 4 games without a win. Saliba's still out. Holding doesn't look the best in that defensive line as well. I expect a lot from this. This season's been so poor, but it's games like this. I don't care about form or where we are in the league. Make sure we win this game. We can't afford to lose this game off the back of a poor season. But I think I think it comes back to what we said at the start of this episode. The lineup has to be spot on, and whether we have to revert back to a back 4, change something, outthink Arteta, we've got to be smart in this game, because they still are a threat going forward. The likes of Trossard, who I know has been sort of a off the bench player for them this season, but the likes of Jesus, Jacques has had a really good season for them. They've got some to fight for. One thing that I do think will work in our advantage, I think City play on the Saturday or the Sunday before the Tuesday. Now, if City win that game, mentally that's a tough thing for Arsenal to have to come into a game on Tuesday night. Big game, whether they want to call it that or not this season, but it's a massive game for them to come into, knowing that City have potentially won their game at the weekend and closing that gap even more. I think City still have 2 games at the moment as it stands, 2 games in hand, I think, ahead of Arsenal. So even if they lose or if they win on Tuesday, City is still really technically in the driving seat. So what's your thoughts on how we should line up? I mean, obviously the back 5 hasn't worked. That 3 midfield hasn't worked. That lone striker or false lone 9 striker hasn't worked. Is this a time where we bring back Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and give him, one little final send off? Coming back. I want to say Adebayor. I think it was when he was at Man City, and he literally ran the whole length of the pitch and celebrating in front of the Arsenal. I want to see that. That's the sort of energy I need from the team on Tuesday. But what's your thoughts on how we should line up?
Yeah, I mean, if we go over back 3, we just can't play Aspi at right wing back again. I think that's an experiment we've tried. It worked well under Tuchel at times, but not anymore. He doesn't have the legs for it anymore. He doesn't track back with enough pace. So I think that can't happen again. I think if we do play over back 3, it needs to be Chile and Loftus-Cheek as the wing backs. Yeah. Fofana, Silva, potentially Chalobah or Aspi, but as one of the centre backs. Yeah, we
Badiashile?
can't be having it. Badiashile. I keep forgetting about Badiashile. Yeah, Badiashile. Sorry, yeah. Badiashile. Sorry, and midfielders. I stick with Enzo and Kante, but I drop Kovacic for this game. I don't want to see him hovering around that kind of 3 midfield, or in a double pivot. I don't want to be seeing that. And then my front three's got to be Felix, Mudryk, and Aubameyang probably. I think if you base it on form and players that can provide you with goals or at least a bit of attacking flair, it's got to be those 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm going exactly with that. That would be my lineup as well. I think Aubameyang, who, and I need to reread the stat, but I'm sure he had more shots on target. I think you sent it me, or someone said, against Brentford, than we've had in how long? It's just ridiculous, you know. So I think we need a goal scorer on the pitch on Tuesday, whether that's Fofana, David Datro Fofana, or Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. It has to be one of the two. We can't go into that game with this sort of, you know, lone striker with Sterling who just runs around and, you know, just throws his arms in the air if he doesn't get a decision go against him or go his way. So yeah, Mudryk, who I thought was really good on Wednesday. Felix is going to start because the cost of the loan tells you that, you know, you want to get your money's worth out of him, but we've got to win.
Statistic though. We've conceded less goals this season than Arsenal. Defensively,
I read that as well.
Yeah, the defense hasn't been our problem this season. It's been scoring the goals, but that statistic shows that Arsenal do concede them as well. So if we do go the right kind of front 3, I think it's an opportunity to maybe, like you said, just holding looks a bit shaky. They don't have Saliba. It's an opportunity for us to maybe get something out of this game and bring Aubameyang back in, who's going to want to prove something against his old team and an old coach, which I think they didn't see eye to eye towards the end, and we saw that in the Amazon Prime documentary. So yeah, I still think he wouldn't celebrate, but I would love to see that an Adebayor-styled run towards the away fans.
I think he will. I think he will. I think if he's going back to Barcelona, which is what the talk is, he's only got a few more months in London. He can be free in Barcelona again. To an extent.
He won't get his house egged the next day.
Yeah. Well, it's better. Yeah, I was going to say something, but I forgot we're recording a football podcast. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a difficult game. But I think these are the sort of games, regardless of form, regardless of where we are in the league. You know, Ramsdale's looked a bit off, you know, the last couple of games as well. So, you know, we've got to take this as a massive game still. This is like you said, a derby. It's key. It's crucial. So before we wrap up, as always, predictions. I'll let you go first.
I'm going to go 0-0. I don't know why. It's going to be a 0-0, I think. We might even park the bus, and Arsenal might not take their chances. But yeah, 0-0.
I'm going to go 1-0. And the only reason I say 1-0, oh yeah, Chelsea, 100%. I'm going to say 1-0 because I want to see Aubameyang do the knee slide in front of the Arsenal fans. In fact, no, in front of Arteta would even be more funny if he done it in front of Arteta. He'd probably get booked for it. But
if he does that, I'll make it my profile picture on Twitter for the next 3 months.
Yeah, I don't know. I know it's a Chelsea podcast. I don't know if you got to see what Paddy Power did outside the Emirates after their game midweek. So they had a massive like champagne bottle, like inflatable, and it must have been, I don't know how. It was massive. It was the size of a house, and they had it outside the Emirates, and it had bottle jobs on. So, and these are the things that we have to take into that game. We cannot have Arsenal winning the Premier League, so we have to do everything in our powers to stop that from happening. So I'm going to go 1-0. You'll go 0-0. I'll take either result after this season. I don't really care as long as we stop them from winning the league. So either way, that's a good shout from both of us. Let us know what you think in the comments as well. Let us know if you think we're going to beat Arsenal. Can we stop them from winning the Premier League? Let us also know about all the stuff we've spoken about on this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you're on YouTube. Make sure you hit that Linktree link in the description. Theo, as always, thank you very much. Enjoy the long bank holiday. We can watch football without any pressure, any stress this weekend until Tuesday. But enjoy the weekend when you get to it. Thank you very much, everyone else, for listening. Episode 91 from the Shed End. We'll be back next week with another episode.